I was ignored on my birthday. Then Dad sent a $2,400 invoice for my cousin's engagement party, so I froze every card and left. No one remembered my birthday again. A few days later, my dad forwarded me an invoice for my cousin's engagement party. Your share, $2,400. I sent back $2 and a screenshot. Removed from shared account. Then I froze every card. They reported fraud. The bank asked, "Did you authorize this shutdown?" I smiled and replied, "No one remembered my birthday." Again, it wasn't just disappointing, it was infuriating. I turned 29 last week. I didn't expect a cake or a parade. Just a simple text would have been enough. Hey, happy birthday, something, but I got nothing. No call from my parents, no messages from my sisters, not even one of those generic Facebook posts people fire off without thinking. Not a word. It was the second year in a row they forgot. The year before, I chalked it up to bad timing. My cousin Jenna got engaged, and everyone was obsessed with planning her party. I let it slide. I shouldn't have. 3 days after my birthday, I opened my email during lunch and saw one from my dad. No subject line, just an attachment. It was a portable document format invoice for Jenna's engagement party. The full cost, venue, catering, photography, centerpieces, valet, totaled a little over $16,000. At the bottom in bold red font, it said, "Your share, $2,400. No greeting, no explanation, just a forwarded invoice and 2 words underneath it, "Your share." I stared at the screen for a while. I wasn't even mad at first, just numb. Then it hit me. The same people who couldn't be bothered to say happy birthday were asking me for nearly $2,500 to celebrate someone else's happiness. I laughed. Then I opened my banking app, transferred $2 from the shared account back to myself, took a screenshot and replied with that image in one sentence, "Removed from shared account." Then I went further. I logged into every bank account I had, checking, savings, credit cards, and froze every card I'd given them access to over the years. Cards my dad used to fill up his truck, a card my mom used for groceries, 2 emergency cards my sisters used just in case while they were away at school. Done. Locked. Canceled. I didn't even hesitate. About an hour later I started getting the calls. 6 missed calls from my dad, 4 from my mom. Even Jenna tried to reach me. Then my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize, my bank. The representative on the line said they'd received fraud claims about unauthorized freezes on the accounts. She asked very calmly, "Did you authorize these actions yourself?" I said yes, every single one. That was the first time in a long while I actually smiled. The fallout was immediate. My mom texted me a long message trying to guilt-trip me about family unity and how this isn't like you. My dad was more direct. He left a voicemail saying I was being dramatic and that this isn't how we solve things. Not a single one of them mentioned my birthday. Still, I ignored every message. The next day, Jenna called and actually had the audacity to say, "You're making things difficult for everyone. This is a big moment for me." I almost responded, but I just put my phone on silent and watched the messages pile up. That night, I started going through all the transactions from the past year. I couldn't believe how many random charges were tied to me, a streaming service I didn't recognize. That was my uncle. My sister had been using my Uber account on the other side of the country. My mom had linked a clothing subscription service. I spent hours shutting everything down. I thought maybe someone would finally realize how messed up it all was. Maybe they'd call and say sorry or even just acknowledge what they'd done. But no. The next day, my mom sent me another message. "We need to talk. You're hurting the family." Not one of them asked me how I felt. Not one asked why I did it. They were just upset they lost access to me, to my money really. But I was done being useful, done pretending things were okay just to keep the peace. This wasn't peace, it was exploitation. And they were about to learn what it felt like to lose their safety net. By the end of the week, the whole family was in panic mode. I stopped answering texts, calls, emails, all of it. My dad sent one last message saying we were having a family meeting at the house on Sunday and that I was expected to come. Not invited, expected. I wasn't planning to go, honestly. But curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to hear what kind of mental gymnastics they'd pulled to justify everything. Plus, I figured if they wanted to corner me into guilt, they'd have to look me in the eye while doing it. When I pulled up to the house, there were already 4 cars in the driveway. I walked in and found everyone in the living room. My parents, my uncle, Jenna and her fiancé, even my aunt, who usually doesn't get involved in drama. And surprisingly, my 2 sisters were there, Emily and Claire, both supposed to be out of state at college. I hadn't seen them in months. They didn't say hi when I walked in, just stared at me like they didn't know what side to be on. The whole thing started with my dad saying they were concerned about my behavior and disappointed in the way I handled things. My mom tried to smooth it out, saying things had gotten out of hand but could be fixed if I just reversed the shutdown. I didn't say anything, just waited. Jenna jumped in, going on about how her engagement party was falling apart and how I was making a statement out of something that should have been private. I think she expected sympathy. I just stared at her. Then my uncle chimed in, trying to act like the voice of reason. He said, "I don't think anyone meant to hurt you, Tom, but you've hurt a lot of people with this stunt." That word stunt set something off. I turned to Claire and asked, "Did you know they forgot my birthday last week?" She opened her mouth, hesitated, then said something that blew the whole thing open. "Oh, they didn't forget. Mom just said we'd celebrate later when Jenna's party was over. She didn't want to take attention away." The room went quiet. My mom looked like she'd swallowed a nail. Emily added, "Yeah, she even told us not to post anything online so it wouldn't seem like we were ignoring Jenna." It was one of those moments when the truth slipped out because someone didn't realize it wasn't supposed to be said. I looked at my mom, then my dad. No one said a word. I stood up. "So, not only did you ignore it, you actually made sure no one said anything because it would mess with Jenna's spotlight." My dad started to speak, but I cut him off. I told them I wasn't their bank, I wasn't their background character, and I wasn't coming back to this house if the only time they reached out was when they needed something. Then I looked at my sisters. "I've been sending each of you $1,000 a month for 2 years. That ends now." Emily started to say something, but I didn't let her finish. I just walked out. I thought they'd try to chase after me. Maybe they'd call the next day, maybe even apologize. But they didn't. And I wasn't done yet. After that disaster of a family meeting, the silence was different. Not peaceful, just a lull before something worse. No apologies came, no explanations. Just the type of quiet that makes it obvious they were regrouping behind my back. 3 days later, I got a long email from my dad. It opened like a work memo. He said I'd made my point, and that while he didn't agree with how I went about it, family comes first. He didn't mention my birthday. He didn't mention anything personal at all. Just a list of reasons why I should reconsider the financial support for your sisters, especially Claire, who is under a lot of stress with graduate school. He attached a spreadsheet, expenses, tuition balances, rent projections, upcoming bills, the works, like I was his business partner, not his son. I didn't open the attachment. I forwarded the email to my entitlement folder and left it there. A few hours later, I got a message from Emily, not the emotional kind, the passive-aggressive kind. She said it was unfair that I suddenly cut off the support you promised and that she guessed money mattered more than family. She even threw in, "I hope you're proud of how much tension you've caused." I didn't answer. What was I supposed to say? "Sorry. I finally noticed you all only text when rent's due," but that wasn't the end of it. 2 days after that, I got a call from a woman I didn't recognize. It was the administrator for Claire's school account. She said Claire had listed me as her emergency contact and billing party for an unpaid tuition fee, and they needed authorization or an alternate payer. I told her to remove my name from every form she had. An hour later, Claire called for the first time since the meeting. She didn't even ask how I was, just launched straight into it, saying I should have told her before pulling support, that she was completely blindsided, and that she didn't understand why I'm punishing her for something Mom and Dad did. I asked her one thing: "Did you know they told you not to post anything for my birthday last year too?" Silence. Then she said, "It wasn't like that." I hung up. At that point, the family started to unravel around me. I could see it happening in real time. My uncle texted me a long rant about how his card got declined at a restaurant and how it was incredibly disrespectful after everything he'd done for me. I asked him what exactly he'd done for me in the last 10 years. He never responded. Jenna had to move her engagement party to a smaller hall. Apparently, the original venue didn't hold the date when the deposit bounced. She sent me a message on Instagram blaming me for the whole thing, saying I ruined her moment. I didn't even read the whole thing before blocking her. Then, as if the universe couldn't script this any better, I got another group email. This one was from my mom. "Your uncle's birthday is next Sunday. We'd like to put everything aside for one day and be together." I didn't reply. I didn't plan to go, but something in me was curious again, so I showed up. The party was in the same backyard where every family event happened since I was a kid. Folding chairs, paper plates, the usual. I walked in, didn't say much, sat near the edge of the crowd and watched. Jenna was there acting like nothing ever happened. My uncle gave me a look, but didn't say a word. My mom hovered like she was trying to time an approach. Then my dad made his move. He came over and asked if we could talk privately. My mom followed. They led me to a side table and sat across from me like it was an interview. He started with how things got out of hand and how I might have gone too far, but that there's still time to fix this. He said they'd been talking, and the best thing would be to go back to how it was. His exact words, "back to how it was." I let that sit for a second before saying no. There's no going back because how it was broken. Then I said something I hadn't planned to say, but it felt right. "You've never treated me like a son, just a resource, and I'm not doing that anymore." That's when Emily walked over. She must have been eavesdropping because she jumped right in saying, You're punishing everyone just because you can. This whole thing is about control. You're not better than us because you make more money. I stood up. This isn't about money. This is about respect, and none of you have ever given me any. Then I looked at Claire, who joined the circle by then, and told them both I'd been sending them $1,000 a month. Not because I had to, but because I thought they were family. That ends now. Claire looked shocked. Emily didn't. She just stared at me like she was trying to figure out how to hurt me back. I left the party after that. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't look back. And I knew this time it was permanent. After I left my uncle's party, I didn't expect to hear from any of them again. But of course they couldn't resist. They never could. The next morning, I woke up to a voice message from my mom. Her tone was different this time. Less guilt, more desperation. She said things like, "This family is breaking apart and we just need to talk." I almost felt bad, but that feeling vanished by the end of the day when I checked my Venmo account. Claire had requested $300 with the caption, "Since you cut me off, I guess I need help one last time," like it was a joke, like it was funny. I declined the request without saying anything and blocked her on the app. 2 days later, Emily called. I answered just to see what angle she'd take. She didn't even bother pretending to be concerned. She said she heard I told people at the party I was done supporting everyone and that I sounded pathetic trying to play the victim. I told her this was the last conversation we'd ever have. She said fine and hung up. That was the moment it all really clicked for me. Not just the financial part, not just the birthday thing, but how deep this had gone. I hadn't just been a wallet. I had been their backup plan, their silent sponsor. They were never going to change. They never had to. I'd made it too easy. By the end of the week, I cut off everything. Shared Netflix, gone. Amazon Prime account, canceled. The Hulu family plan, nope. Even the Spotify account I forgot I was still paying for, wiped. One by one, they lost every convenience they tied to me. Every invisible little luxury that came from my side of things. Then came the final straw. I got a Facebook event invite, my uncle's 60th birthday dinner, private room at a steakhouse downtown, expensive place. The kind of thing you needed a deposit to book. Under the invite, there was a message from my dad. "Hope we can put everything behind us for one night. Would mean a lot to the family." I didn't respond, but I did call the restaurant. Told them I wasn't attending and that if anyone tried to use my name or card to hold the reservation, they didn't have permission. The woman on the phone thanked me, said it had already happened once. Someone tried using a card under my name, but it didn't go through. I didn't ask who. I didn't need to. That Sunday, while they sat at the steakhouse pretending everything was normal, I went for a walk. Clear as sky I'd seen in weeks. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I felt done. A clean kind of done. From that day on, none of them reached out again. Not my parents, not my sisters, not even Jenna. They finally understood, and that was the peace I'd been waiting for. After my uncle's dinner came and went without a single message or call, it hit me. They were serious this time. But not in the way people usually mean it. Serious like a Cold War. Everyone had retreated into their corners, hoping time would do the repair work for them. It wouldn't. A week passed. Then too, I started to notice how quiet my life had become. Not just less drama, actual quiet. No notifications blowing up my phone. No passive-aggressive texts from Claire about emergencies. No check-ins from my mom laced with guilt. I deleted the shared calendar we all use for family events, disconnected their contacts from any alerts. I didn't even know Jenna had moved the date of her wedding until someone at work asked if I was going. I wasn't invited. A part of me wanted to say that hurt, but honestly, it didn't. I had nothing left to give them. Not time, not money, not space in my head. But then something happened that pushed it all past the point of no return. My company published a small feature about me in an internal newsletter, just a spotlight about a recent project I'd led. It wasn't a big deal, just one of those quick employee appreciation things. But a coworker tagged me when it went up on LinkedIn. A few hours later, I got a message request. It was from Jenna. She said she saw the post and she wanted to talk, that she missed how close we used to be. That family events weren't the same without me. I sat with that for a while and then I replied with one line, "You missed the free ride, not me." She didn't answer. She didn't try again. A few days later, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was Emily. She said she wanted to meet for coffee, just talk, said she'd been thinking about how everything had gone down and maybe it was time to clear the air. It was tempting for a second. I wondered if this was it, the apology, the real conversation. But then I remembered her words at my uncle's party. "You're not better than us because you make more money." The way she dismissed everything like I was throwing a tantrum instead of finally standing up for myself. So I didn't answer. Instead, I called my bank, made sure all the old linked accounts were still dead, and set up alerts in case anyone tried anything funny again. A few weeks later, a friend of mine ran into Claire at a bookstore. They made small talk, nothing deep. But at one point she said, "Tom thinks he's punishing us. He doesn't realize he's just cutting himself off." That stuck with me, not because I doubted my choice, but because I finally understood they hadn't learned anything. They thought this was punishment, that I was sulking, that I'd come back eventually. They still didn't get it. This wasn't punishment, this was freedom. By the time summer rolled in, it had been nearly 4 months of silence. No calls, no messages, no surprise emails with "let's talk" in the subject line. They had finally accepted it, or at least stopped pretending they didn't deserve it. The first few weeks had been weird, like walking out of a loud concert and realizing how quiet the world actually is. But after that, the quiet became something else entirely. It became peace. I started doing things I hadn't realized. I stopped enjoying cooking real dinners instead of eating out every night, going to the gym again, fixing things around my apartment. It's funny how quickly I filled the time that used to be spent putting out fires other people started. My savings grew, not dramatically. I wasn't broke before, but I felt it. That slow climb of financial breathing room. The $1,000 a month I used to send my sisters now went toward an investment account. I opened a second savings fund just for vacations. Actual vacations. Me getting on planes and going places where no one needed anything from me. In August, I flew to Seattle for 3 days. Just me. No itinerary. No checking my phone every 5 minutes. I sat by the water one morning, holding a coffee that cost way too much, and just listened to the waves. That was the first time it really settled in. I didn't miss them. I didn't miss my parents. I didn't miss my sisters. I didn't even miss the idea of them, because the version I'd held on to all those years, the idea of a family that cared, had never actually existed. I just funded it into being. I saw my old life clearly now. I was the dependable one, the one who always had just enough to help, the one who paid without being asked because they knew I would, and they loved that version of me until I stopped. Since I cut ties, no one came around to genuinely reconnect. Not one honest apology, not one effort without an agenda. The olive branches were always tied to bank accounts and guilt. And I didn't feel bitter anymore. I didn't feel like I was holding on to a grudge. I felt like someone who finally walked out of a locked room he hadn't realized had a door the whole time. Last week, I ran into a family friend at the grocery store. She looked surprised to see me, asked if I'd be at Jenna's wedding next month. I told her no. She nodded and said, "I figured it's been different without you." I just smiled. She didn't ask more, she didn't need to. I walked out with my groceries, got in my car, and drove home. A quiet, beautiful drive. No missed calls, no surprise invoices, no emergencies disguised as love, just me. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. The update. I hadn't heard from them in over 6 months. By that point, I assumed things were permanently settled. The silence had held for so long it stopped feeling like silence and more like normal life. Then something arrived in the mail. A real envelope, no return address on the front, just my name and my apartment number handwritten in pen. I stood at the counter for a second before opening it, half wondering if it was from an old friend, or maybe something from work. But when I slid the paper out, I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was my dad's. The letter was 2 pages long, neatly written. No dear Tom, no love Dad, just a message. At first it read like a journal entry. He talked about the weather, how the house was too quiet lately, how my mom had taken up gardening again and filled the backyard with plants that she never really took care of before. Then it got heavier. He said he'd been thinking a lot about how things had fallen apart, and that he didn't blame me anymore. That he'd spent too long assuming the role of the father who knew better and didn't stop to realize how much he leaned on me, not just for money, but for stability. He said something that stood out. "I thought you'd always be the one to keep us together, and I never once asked if you wanted to be." He admitted to the birthday thing, said it hadn't slipped their minds by accident, but that they made an active choice, one he now sees was so small in the moment and so unforgivable afterward. Then came a part I didn't expect. He said they'd sold the recreational vehicle. That caught me. It was his most prized thing, a second home on wheels, the one he always bragged about taking cross-country once we retire. He said they sold it a month ago quietly and used part of the money to pay off the credit cards he and my mom had been struggling to manage since I froze the accounts. He didn't ask me to come back, didn't ask to talk, just said we won't reach out again. We've said our piece and it's your choice now. There was a postscript at the bottom. Your mom wanted to say sorry, she didn't know how. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer where I keep things I don't know what to do with. Old receipts, spare keys, unopened birthday cards from people I used to talk to. I haven't responded yet, maybe I never will. But I'll say this, for the first time they didn't try to guilt me or ask for anything. They didn't pretend to be right, they just let go. And maybe, just maybe, that's what I needed most of all. Looking back, the hardest part of walking away wasn't the anger. The anger was actually easy. It was a bright, burning fuel that propelled me out the door and gave me the nerve to hit freeze on all those accounts. No, the hardest part was the quiet grief that settled into the empty spaces of my apartment afterward. It's a very specific, suffocating kind of hell to mourn people who are still alive, People who live just a few towns over but might as well be strangers. For 29 years, my entire identity within that family had been built on utility. I was the financial shock absorber. I was the dependable older brother, the dutiful son who silently picked up the tab so no one else had to feel the discomfort of sacrifice. And for a long time, I mistook their reliance on me for love. I used to think, if they need me this badly, I must be important to them. That was the lie I swallowed daily to make the sheer, exhausting one-sidedness of it all palatable. The birthday incident, the fact that my own mother orchestrated a blackout of my existence just to protect my cousin's spotlight, was the shattering of that lie. It was never about a cake or a generic Facebook post. It was the stark, undeniable proof that my presence in their lives was only valued conditionally. When I was paying for their groceries, funding my sister's social lives, and keeping my dad's truck on the road, I was the pillar of the family. But when the day came to simply acknowledge that I existed, that I breathed, that I mattered without opening my wallet, I was an inconvenience, a distraction to be swept under the rug. Accepting that truth broke something fundamental inside me. I spent those first few months of silence navigating a terrifying identity crisis. If I wasn't their ATM, who was I? It sounds pathetic, but when you spend your whole adult life pouring your energy into a bottomless pit, you forget how to hold anything for yourself. I had to relearn my own edges. I had to learn how to walk into a store and buy something just because I liked it, without doing the mental math of how it might impact their emergency funds. I had to sit in my quiet living room on a Friday night and convince myself that the silence wasn't a punishment for being a bad son. It was a sanctuary I'd finally earned. There were nights, especially when the holidays rolled around, where the phantom pain flared up violently. I'd see commercials of big families passing food around a crowded table, or hear coworkers complaining about their overbearing parents, and a sharp, bitter pang would hit my chest. I missed them. Or rather, I missed the idea of them. I missed the family I thought I was paying to keep together. But every time that wave of nostalgia threatened to pull me under, I anchored myself to reality. I remembered the invoice for Jenna's party. I remembered the audacity of my sisters staring at me blankly, waiting for their monthly direct deposit. My dad's letter, the one sitting in my drawer, didn't erase any of that. Him selling the RV didn't buy back the years of exploitation. But his admission, the rare, honest acknowledgement that they had treated me as a resource rather than a son, was a validation I didn't know I was starving for. It didn't magically fix the relationship. Some things, once broken, are fundamentally and structurally unsound. You don't move back into a house that collapsed on you just because the builder finally admits he used cheap materials. But his letter did something crucial. It gave me permission to fully let go without the nagging weight of guilt. They were finally taking responsibility for their own survival. Today, I am 30. I spent my birthday on a beach in Costa Rica completely alone, holding a beer and watching the sun dip below the horizon. My phone didn't ring with forced pleasantries. There were no forwarded invoices or passive-aggressive texts. There was just the sound of the ocean, the warm air on my skin, and the undeniable lightness of a man who finally belongs completely to himself. I am no longer a background character in someone else's drama. I am the author of my own piece, and looking at where I am now, that piece is worth every single bridge I had to burn.